Appropriations for Economic Development. Thank you all for being here. Good afternoon. I'm going to ask if Senator Watson would open us up in prayer. If you will, bow your heads.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Number 3, is that on?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let us go to prayer. Dear Lord, continue to look over us under Capitol Hill and let us do your will and help us discern and look for quality in your work. Continue to look over us in this weather and our travels. In the Lord's name I pray. Amen.
Thank you, Senator Watson. Well, we're going to go ahead and get started. Jason's on his way. He should be here walking in just a second. But I want to go ahead and start, and I would like to ask, is Frank Poe? I know you need to get to the House Committee meeting after this, so if you would go first, I'd appreciate it. And tell us a little bit about what's going on at the World Congress Center.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Hold on, let me see. There you go.
Okay. Thanks, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. It's indeed an honor for us to be here with you today. And I want to say to you, Senator Beach, how appreciative we are of your involvement with our Legislative Overview Committee there at the Congress Center and certainly your past leadership.
Well, thank you, and you do a great job, and we've got a great facility there, and that's a big place to fill up, and I'm glad we're getting convention business and getting World Cup and
it's doing well.
College football championships. It's all good.
Absolutely. Well, I'll walk you through a presentation that we prepared for you. It should be at your seat there. I want to highlight a few things that are occurring on our campus outside of our convention trade show business. We're wrapping up today the American Association for Heating and Refrigeration and Air Conditioning. Had over 40,000 people in town for that meeting. One of our best customers and is rebooked for us in 4 years out. So we're really excited about that. In addition to those types of events, which we do throughout the year on our campus, I wanted to highlight a few things that will be occurring on our campus over the course of the next few years. Obviously, College Football Championship will return to Atlanta for 2025. It's the first time it's returned to a city in which hosted the College Football Championship under the new rules. So we're looking forward to that, and this should be also the championship game that will be under the new playoff system that they're developing, designed, and implemented. FIFA World Cup in 2026, another large event that will be on our campus, and we're looking forward to that. Should hear within the next few months. We believe before June of this year that what games will be hosted in Atlanta and on our campus as a byproduct of that. Global Business Travel, the largest business travel organization, will be on our campus. And then MODEX, we highlighted as one of our larger convention groups that meets with us on an every other year basis. And also is tied in with the Georgia ports. It's a logistics show. So it's
Mr. Poe, could I ask you a question on that World Cup? You have to put real grass down in the stadium, don't you, for the soccer?
Yes. Yeah. They haven't approved just yet the use of artificial turf. We're hopeful that we'll get to that point, but the plans are right now that it would be turf, regular grass stitched in. We did that at the Georgia Dome when we had competitive friendly games that involved North and South American teams that play there. So it can be done. It's just a very challenging task to get it laid out. But that's as it stands today.
Okay.
If you'll turn to the next page, it talks about project funding over the past 20 years. And the reason this is in front of you is that we are oftentimes asked the question, well, what are we doing in terms of reinvestment out of our own resources? So this gives you a depiction of how over the course of years the Congress Center has put in $67 million out of its own resources generated through the events that we host there. And then the state legislature legislature and the governor's office has supported us as well. With obviously a much larger number, over $300 million over the course of that same time period. So about a third of what we invest, or a fourth of what we invest, comes out of our own net profits that we realize on campus. And I put a little asterisk on that because in 2 years that you see there, 2020 and 2021, we were not able to reinvest because we had to support our operation through the COVID pandemic, and so projects that we would have regularly slated to refund, we had to use that cash to sustain our operation during that time period. We reduced our staff by over 200 people, removed all part-time staff, and everyone took on chores out of their regular job sequence in order to keep us afloat during that time period. So we're glad to say we're back on the other side of that. We reinvested in FY22 $3.4 million back into the complex. In the next page, you'll see out of the projects we funded, we just highlighted a few in terms of what we were able to accomplish. We did some work on roofing, park improvements, etc. But you'll see the descriptions noted there on that page of the types of projects that we funded in the course of the last few years. In looking at our capital outlay request for this coming fiscal year, there are two items noted, and this is really a redirect of funds that were approved in calendar 2022. For fiscal 23. So we're looking to redirect $7 million that can be found on page 18 of the tracking sheet, and I think it's 137.1 that's noted there.
It's on page 17, guys, and it's 137.1. Is it page? Okay. I'm sorry.
That's all right, no problem.
We got different page numbers here.
Okay. So in the budgeting process for this fiscal year, we had requested $15.29 million to go towards escalator and elevator replacements. To give you context, we have escalators in the building that are over 40 years old. And so we're in significant need of updating and improving, and a number of those escalators parts are no longer available for them. So we're robbing Peter to pay Paul in some instances in order to keep the escalators operational. So the 15.29 was to get us sort of the most critical units replaced. The redirect of $7 million that was found in the governor's amended budget, as I noted, it certainly gets us a good way into that first priority group. We're also, out of our own resources, redirecting some capital dollars to replace 2 escalators that go to the Thomas Murphy Ballroom. That some of you have attended events there before. Literally, those escalators were falling apart, so we took them out of commission, and we've ordered up 2 units to replace those ourselves, and are hopeful to get those in here in the next few months. In addition to that, we submitted through OPB a request for HVAC equipment replacement for this fiscal 24 to the tune of $10 million, and that would be design work to replace our aging units. And again, we have a building that's over 40 years old to up to 20 years old. So a lot of our older parts of the building, the equipment is running out of steam, as they say. And then in fiscal 25, we're seeking an additional, or would be seeking an additional $6.3 million for escalator replacement. That is our priority right now. It's really escalator and elevator replacements throughout the complex. So if you look on the next page, it gives you a description of our first priority projects and replacements is noted there, and you added some photographs that depicted some of the conditions that we're facing, and these are not for shock value, but this actually happened during a cheer sports event, and so we were fortunate no one was injured in that process. The one plate just slid under a plate behind it, and it resulted in what you see depicted there. So current and completed projects, we just wanted to provide you an update on the stewardship that we've had for the funds that you provided to us in the past. The largest of that was the expansion of our exhibit space with the connecting exhibit hall between our B and C exhibit facilities. We had indicated when we were before the legislature during the time frame we were asking for those funds that we felt we could generate an additional 18 conventions within 3 years of its opening. We've actually exceeded that. We're up to about 23 conventions because that allowed us to combine 2 separate halls into one larger unit. And International Poultry was the first group to use it, which is a Georgia-based firm, and did that in January of 2020 before the pandemic hit. And in addition to that, we've we're able to add a transportation terminal there between International Plaza. If you've parked in the red deck, it's between that and State Farm Arena. It's a $22 million project that was completed on time and under budget. And it's been a tremendous asset to the campus, in particular for shuttle busing, shared ride vehicles, Uber, Lyft, and some taxis when that's appropriate and works for the convention group. If you go to the next page, our pedestrian mall that really binds the campus together with sort of a common front door. That extends from Marietta and will go all the way up to the hotel that we're developing on site, and I'll touch on that in just a moment. That again was completed and on budget, and both of those companion projects have really been tremendous assets for the campus and for the customers that use the facility. Our roofing project, over the course of years, the General Assembly has provided us $52.8 million. So we're going through a process of replacing the entire roof system across the campus. We did some remedial work out of our own resources back in fiscal 18 and 19, but this allows us really to push forward and complete it, and we're working through the phases associated with that currently, and this provides you some insights into the locations on the next page in the blue, green, and I guess that's a reddish color on there that shows where we're working across the campus. The last project to touch on is the hotel that we're developing. Again, this is a non-recourse, tax-exempt revenue bond issued by the Georgia World Congress Center that was under the authority provided to us by the legislature. It is slated to open December the 18th, a substantial completion of this year. This is a 975-room property, 40-story building. If you've been to the events on campus or at the stadium, you'll see it up on about the 35th floor right now. So it's tracking to that budget. It's we're within our project development budget. We believe right now where we're at, we'll come in with a few dollars at the end left over that we'll either put into debt service reserve or pay off debt associated with that. Our booking pace for that, for the hotel in the first year, our budgeted ADR, average daily rate for a hotel room, was about 216. We're tracking at about 272 right now. So it's exceeding our pro forma projections and our occupancy projections for the first year of opening, and we'll track bookings throughout it. We're seeing that same sort of repeat in 25 and 26. So very excited about that project, which, as a byproduct of which, the net cash flow after reserves generate excess funds that we take back to the authority and can use it again for capital improvements across the campus and reinvestment back into the facility. That was a significant part of the overall financial story that we were looking to accomplish, and we're on target certainly to achieve those objectives for us actually in the first couple of years of its operation. So very excited about that. Always want to tell our story about what we do for the state of Georgia. We've hosted over 170 events. 3 million people crossed our doors. We've generated back to the state $1.6 billion in economic impact, and we support 16,000 jobs across the metropolitan area. The direct profit noted here is $76 million. This is for our FY22 financial report. $76 million in direct profit, which is really just capturing sales tax. what we provide back to the state through the business that we generate. Does not include the transportation fund on the $5 a room night that goes back to the state through the events that we host, and does not include any of the income taxes off of jobs supported by the Congress Center and through the events that we have. So, Mr. Chair and members of the committee, that concludes our report, and certainly would be happy to respond to any questions that you may have.
Well, thank you for your presentation. Do we have any questions?
Just a comment on number 5. I know you've got a lot of experience around the country, and we appreciate you doing this here. It was a good presentation, and I think you do a great job over there. So
Well, thank you very
glad
much.
to have you in that spot.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Mr. Poe, I have a question. How many escalators are we going to be able to do? Is it like 9 or 10?
Yes,
No?
with this tranche here, the 15 would get us to that number. We've got 64 throughout the complex. So we've got
And
a
are
lot.
they all the same age, basically?
No,
or-
there's some newer ones.
Okay.
Obviously, with Building C and the BC connector, we've had some newer equipment that's gone in there. But this really starts us in Building A and part of Building B, because those are the older of the units. So
My question is, if we were able to fund more, would it be economies of scale if you did more? You get
Yes.
a cheaper price if you
You get
21 of them instead of 9? Or
that's correct. You would. The bidding on, the higher the number that you're doing, the better efficiencies the manufacturer get, the lower pricing you can get.
And would you say you really need to do more than the 9 you're going to do?
Yes, sir.
How many total do you think really need to be replaced?
On the first priority, it was 21.
21?
Yes.
I think that's what you had told me, Lindsay,
Yeah.
21?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I just, want to, one, make sure people are safe on those escalators. And 2, if we can, maybe find some more money, get you to do a few more and get a cheaper price
Well,
for you.
Certainly, we'd be appreciative of that, but
okay.
we'll be appreciative of the $7 million as well. So,
Okay.
thank you.
All right. Well, we're going to work on it. But again, thank you for the presentation.
Yes.
And I just want to tell you that every time I speak to a Rotary Club or a Chamber of Commerce, I brag about the economic impact and the economic engine that the World Congress Center is, and the Mercedes-Benz Stadium, and what that campus means to the restaurants and the hotels and tourism, because we are economic development and tourism, and you play a big part in that, and we thank you for what you do.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Any other questions? Okay. Thank you.
All right. Thank y'all very much.
We'll move right on. We'll ask Commissioner Pat Wilson. Is Commissioner Wilson here? Oh, come on up, Commissioner. You're up next. What page is he? All right, so it'd be page 11 is where we'll start on page 11. What page for me?
Chairman, committee, thank you for the time today, and thank you for your continued support for economic development. You all know that this has been an unprecedented year, unprecedented time for job growth and diversification across the state, and that doesn't happen in a vacuum. It doesn't happen without support of the General Assembly. And Chairman, we've been very lucky for a long time to have worked with you to continue to be successful across the state. And so
And
I don't have a lot.
I got to tell you, we are honored to have the Georgian of the Year presenting to this
I was waiting
this
on
committee.
that, Chairman.
I mean, Georgia Trend, Georgian of the Year, James Magazine, Georgian of the Year.
I tell you,
I tell you.
you know it's a low bar in the state of Georgia when I'm the Georgian of the Year, Chairman.
Congratulations.
But thank you. It is an honor because I know that this was an award that wasn't for me. It's an award that went to an entire department of people who worked really hard to make that happen. So it's great to get that recognition, but I do know that it's because of a lot of people. Chairman, I do have to say congratulations on being our new committee chair. I think I've traded up in looks from my last committee chair. But we're glad to have you. I don't have a lot to go over today because our budget was not really touched in the governor's budget nor in the House. But what I want to say though is that how much we appreciate the continued support. Without the help of the General Assembly, we would not be the number one place in the nation to do business, and that has been consistent for a long time. We do have a number of other issues, and I know my good friend Commissioner Nunn is going to talk about the ads to REBA. I'm happy to discuss any of those, but that is, again, like I said, this is an unprecedented time in economic development, and the amended budget for DCA reflects that as we look to continue the great work that we've seen from Rivian and Hyundai and the other projects we've seen around the state. So, Chairman, I'm happy to take any questions from the committee, but again, thank you for having us today.
Any questions of Commissioner? I do have one question. I know last year, I believe Senator Mullis, who chaired this committee, appropriated $1 million for music tourism or music industry, and we were told that those funds were not used for that. They were used for something else. Can you just kind of update us on that?
Sure, sure.
Tell us what that was about.
Senator Mullis appropriated $1 million that was specified for a music center of innovation. That did not come from us. That was not an ask from us. And so during the process, we worked with Senator Mullis, who also had a separate track going for bond appropriation. And so as that was added in, he said that the $1 million was not needed for the Center of Innovation. And so John and the team working with OPB approved a plan where we were able to front pay some of our obligations, the Georgia Allies being one, and then update our audiovisual equipment in the department. And that actually has been great, as we've found that every company that we work with wants to do Zoom meetings now instead of that initial meeting being face-to-face. So that's been an investment that was well worth it.
Okay. Also, have the two Rivian jobs been hired or positions been hired?
So one of them has been hired and the other one's on hold.
Okay.
Until the hiring process starts for the company. But that's the workforce position.
Okay.
But the project manager has been hired, and that project is moving ahead.
Okay. And then just give us any updates on amended FY22 and FY23 budget ads. Do you have any ads?
Nothing in our budget was added in amended, and haven't seen the 23 yet. But
okay.
Amended 23, just a couple pass-through items.
Oh yeah.
Mr. Poe spoke of them, the $7 million redirect, and another $1 million for them. Then an additional $77,000 for the Historical Society. But that will not be in the base. And then in the 24 budget, there's some takeouts of those one-time funding for MLK, the World Congress Center, the $7 million and things like that. So there are one-time funding in the amended 23. They'll come out in the 24 base budget.
But those were the pass-throughs in our department.
Right.
We don't touch those
Yeah.
ones. Yeah.
They're all pass-throughs.
Commissioner, this really isn't a budget question, but since I have you here, I was in a Transportation Committee meeting with Senator Dolezal, who chairs Transportation, the other day, and we were really shocked by they're predicting the industrial space in Savannah is going to double in 10 years.
Yeah.
And I wanted to ask you if you're working with Russell McMurray to make sure we have the infrastructure in place. Because I'll just be honest with you, I was on the DOT board for 8 years, and we got to start working on those projects now, because those roads will take, that infrastructure will take 8 to 10 years by the engineering, design, right-of-way, environmental, before you can even build the roads. And I'm worried that they're going to grow so fast down there. Do we have the infrastructure in place for the freight and that's why I think we definitely need to do a freight and logistics plan. And I know Senator Dolezal's working on that, but I mean, I'm happy that port's continuing to grow. I mean, that's an economic engine for us, but we got to make sure we're investing in infrastructure down in Savannah, or they're going to get choked.
No, that's a great point, Chairman. And you know, that's when I met you, is when you were working on the GDOT board originally. You know, it is something that we have seen. That region is the fastest growing region in the state right now, and congratulations. Senator Watson, that is, y'all have had some amazing wins, but it is because we've consistently supported the port's efficiencies, all the things that the Port of Savannah has done to continue to be the most efficient port in the country. But then as a region, we have a region that has really been forward-thinking, and they've looked at workforce housing. They've looked at all the issues that you need in order to be a fast-growing region, and that does include congestion. But I have to say, Commissioner McMurray is a good friend. I've known him for a long time, since he was the Northeast Georgia engineer. We work together very well, and you know, as you can see from the work that they've done around the Hyundai facility that they're going to be doing, you know, all of that has been planned, has been in the works, because we knew something was going to go there, but it's a matter of you know, when it's going to happen. And so, you know, Russell and team have done a great job of being prepared for that. So that is a legitimate question. I mean, my gosh, how long have we been working on the Jimmy DeLoach Parkway?
Yeah.
I mean, that is, and you
That
were
started
doing
with
that. I know
Chris
when
Riley.
you were there.
That was with the first year of Governor Deal's
That's right.
administration. We
So it
worked
takes
on that,
time. We know that.
But, okay.
But I give Janine and Russell a lot of credit, because they've been working to plan for this for a long time.
Okay. All right. Any other questions? Thank you, Commissioner. Keep up the good work. Keep bringing
Thank y'all.
jobs to Georgia. Thanks.
Thanks for your support.
All right. Commissioner Nunn, why don't you come on up and we'll hear from you and what's going on in DCA.
Absolutely. And I did bring, I should have talked to Frank Poe beforehand, because I would have brought handouts, but I did bring a couple of quick slides. And if I can't get them to work, then we'll work without them. Okay. Tell you what.
All right,
I'm
page
sure
page two for DCA.
Fantastic. And I will, I'll get you a presentation later.
Okay.
I'll just kind of dispense with that. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be with you today, and thank you for your support. I was going to share a little bit about what we're doing at DCA. Of course, y'all know that we administer about 70 plus different programs, both federally and state funded. I was going to highlight a couple of those just to give you an idea of the work that we've been doing, in addition to stimulus work over the last several years. Again, I'll follow up with that in a slide presentation with you. Let's just dive right in on the budget recommendations, and I think I'm working off the same tracking sheet as you. At the bottom of page 2 is the first recommendation. Am I with you,
Yep.
Chairman?
Yes.
So in our amended budget request, we have a handful of items that the governor highlighted. It's fine. I'm good. No, it's fine. No need. I'm already past that. In the amended budget, we had a couple of items that were included as simply a directive. One was 75.1 to maintain existing cost allocation structure for administrative salaries to preserve transparency of full cost of federally funded programs. And the second, 75.2 at the top of page 3, talks about utilizing existing funds to modernize the website. I will say, and I think these two are related, understand the latter is actually the former, the 75.1, is really a clarification of a budget development request for additional funding for our enterprise administration of the agency. That's just an increasing burden on the programs that we administer, due in large part to the fact that the agency has to absorb about 80% of the cost of the state salary increases. And so that, of course, creates some financial pressure, which has led to our postponing a website redesign much needed, I must say, for the last 3 years. We have, there are cost and time constraints. Honestly, stimulus programs have absorbed much of our capacity in the agency over the last couple of years. But we are in the process of back-end upgrades to our website. And we do anticipate that the cost of phase 2 and 3 of that project will be significant. DCA's website is a behemoth. What it lacks in aesthetic appeal, it makes up for as an information hub for local governments and other stakeholders alike. And just as we've got 70 different programs, that's mirrored in the website, which has 6,500 different content pages, 14,000 files, about 7,600 lines of custom code, and about 50 gigabytes of data. All that's to say our greatest ability, our greatest concern is our ability to fund this, and we certainly want to break it up into phases. But we're going to be working with OPB on that recommendation, with the next phase. Intended phase being site design and cost estimates to actually get that done. So that really is a little bit about 75-1 and 75-2. I think the next item on your tracking sheet, if we move along, takes us to page 9 under State Community Development Programs. At 82.1, this is actually a House add to the governor's recommendations, an increase in funds for preservation of historic sites, $1,931,000 and change. And 82.2 is the increase of funds, $750,000 for one-time funding for emergency communication infrastructure needs in South Georgia. And I understand that has to do with the corridor between Tifton and Waycross, but I don't have a lot of detail on those two House adds. At the bottom of that page, under State Economic Development Programs at 83.1, Pat already highlighted for you the increase in funds for projected cost of large economic development projects receiving regional economic business assistance. That addition of $166,718,534 at the recommendation of the governor. We have a very successful economic development program as a state. There are few, probably less than 10% of projects that are announced on an annual basis that do receive some discretionary funding. These are large-scale projects that are outside of the capacity of the state to handle without appropriations and your support. So this is really related to 3 specific projects that Pat spoke to. In terms of activity, just because I'm sure that's a question with a large ad, that is for land acquisition and site preparation. And when you're talking about that on a scale of 2,000 acres, those costs for environmental and actually moving dirt, are fairly significant. At 83.
I got a question.
Absolutely.
On 83.1. During the House hearings, we were told Rivian's portion of the funds were needed for overage costs.
That's right.
Is there a clawback mechanism if they don't do what they say they were going to do? Or
so in all of our economic development projects, and this is probably a deep dive discussion that we could go into, we enter into a contractual relationship with the development authority because that's who receives public funding, and there's a public asset to show for that, as well as the company. So there are requirements in terms of contractual requirements in terms of jobs creation and in terms of investment. We monitor those for the life of the project. We monitor their ability to hit those numbers, and in the event that a company were not to hit those numbers, there is a clawback provision, and that does get triggered from time to time. Thankfully, most of the investment into the state delivers far more than we ever anticipated. But yes,
Commissioner, you want to say something?
Yeah.
Yes.
So, Chairman, the money that the overages on that Rivian piece really come down to our land acquisition, and then it's the fact that moving dirt is way more expensive today than when we started that process, and you're trying to plan that out. Regardless of the company itself, the state owns the premier site in the southeast, minus Bryan County. And we will be moving that dirt. And say, worst case scenario, something terrible happens and Rivian is not there tomorrow, which I think is far-fetched, because that is a solid company. We own the best site. We have a pad. It's ready to go, and we'll put something on it. So
Okay.
all the tax credits and all the things that the company would receive if they move down the path, they have to actually create jobs in order to realize that to begin with. But the money that we, the taxpayer, put into a project like that is discretionary goes to an asset, and the state will own that asset regardless of what happens to the company. So I feel really good about how we as a state do incentives, because we protect the taxpayer dollar.
One final question.
Sure.
Just, were we included in these commitments, the General Assembly, or the chairman before me, or the chairman in the House?
So the way this works is I don't do any of this in a vacuum. So
Okay.
these are approved by the governor, and the speaker and lieutenant governor
Okay.
have those conversations.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks, Pat. As usual, I was speaking to a program as a whole, and you were able to answer the question that was actually asked. So, any other questions on that before I move on?
No.
Okay, 83.2 is a House addition of $650,000 for the Savannah Logistics Innovation Center. This was actually a Senate ad in the budget, I want to say 3 years ago. I can go back and check my notes. You asked Commissioner Wilson a little bit about all of the logistics opportunity, I'll leave
Yeah.
it there, in the Savannah area. This is, to my the best of my recollection, this is actually a partnership between Georgia Southern, Savannah Economic Development, the Georgia Ports Authority, to address logistics innovation.
So what is this new funding going towards?
So again, this was a House ad, and so we're still working on gathering all the details behind that. But my understanding is this will go to a combination of some additional planning for the work that they are doing, and also to some workforce development. But I'll have to get you a full answer on that. I'm still unpacking the House ad, and Senator Watson may have some more details on that.
Senator Watson, you got any details on this Savannah Innovation?
I do, but I don't have it with me now.
Okay.
I'll follow up with you.
All right. Okay, next.
Page 10, I think that's where we are. Page 10, 84-1. Again, this is a House reduction of funds for contractual services, $572,000 under an attached agency, the Georgia Georgia Environmental Finance Authority. I will say your team already moved one of the budgets, one of the governor's recommendations, which was to move the funding for an attached agency, Greta, into the transportation budget, and y'all have already done that, so it's not on your tracking sheet, but the governor did recommend that we move that as an attached agency from DCA to DOT. And then the last couple are in the One Georgia Authority budget, and so I will start with our recommendation at 86.1 to the governor's recommended that we take some funds that were appropriated for infrastructure grants, which, if you recall, when you first appropriated funds for infrastructure grants, there were no federal funds coming down the pipe. There have since been a large number of federal funds, and so we actually put this on hold to roll out the state program. We still believe that there will be some projects in the state that may not meet the federal requirements, but the more significant need at the moment is housing, workforce housing. So the recommendation is to take the $21.5 million in the broadband infrastructure grant program, as well as the residual amount in the rural innovation grant program, which is $14,203,000 and change, to focus on rural workforce housing. We all know, and you already talked about this great success that we've experienced across the state as we have large employers, 80% of whom are locating outside the metro Atlanta area, moving into all corners of our state. One of the biggest challenges that we all hear about, the governor, us, Commissioner Wilson, is the concern about workforce housing, right? So consider, single-family for-sale homes in the 150, 175,000 up to 250,000 range. Consider other forms of multifamily. There's just a significant need, and so the intent here is to create a flexible pool of funds that we can work in conjunction with local governments to address needs, whether that be construction financing, whether that be infrastructure grants to extend infrastructure and enable the developers to develop, or in cases of land. So that's
how's that structure going to be built around that funding? I mean, is there a board that's going to?
Absolutely. So this is all under the One Georgia Authority.
So it's One Georgia Authority?
Yes, so it all sits under the One Georgia Authority. So all of those, and of course the Lieutenant Governor serves on that authority. And there's a House and Senate Oversight Committee on the authority. Senator Tillery sits on that. So all of those decisions would be approved by the One Georgia Authority. And again, this is a program that we have conceptually designed, with your approval for us to use these funds. We would roll it out in short order, and again in conjunction with local communities, because we realize that the needs may vary from community to community, be it infrastructure, land, or construction finance for developers.
Well, it is an issue. I got to tell you, I met with a company down in Savannah that was here, and they have warehouse space and industrial space down there.
Right.
And they've got land. They're actually building multi-family apartments on their property to house their employees.
Yeah, we've seen that.
I mean, that is unusual, but I mean, that's, but they're doing that, and they need to do it. They said we got to have the workforce, and they got to have a place to live.
That's exactly right, and we've seen that literally in every corner of the state. This is not an Atlanta issue or a Savannah issue. You see it in Dalton, you see it in Gainesville, you see it in Mitchell County, Thomas, all across the state. And so this is really intended to be a pilot for us to figure out where that best, where those needs, where those local needs may best be met. The only other two adds here, and they are both House additions, at 86-2, utilizing $5 million in unallocated rural innovation funds. There was an EDA grant that is really accrues to the benefit of rural Georgia in substantial regard, particularly Southwest Georgia as it relates to ag innovation, some in parts of Middle Georgia related to military and armed forces. It's around advanced manufacturing. Georgia Tech is the lead on this, and the $65 million grant, federal grant, requires a $5 million match. That is the directive here from the in the House, is to use $5 million in unallocated funds for that match. And then the 86.3, reducing funds for unutilized grants, the 29,555,757. My understanding is that actually sweeps all of the remaining funds for the Rural Innovation Grant Program from the FY23 budget. With the there may be actually I think that leaves us with a remainder of $10 million. $5 million would be allocated for this the 86.2. $1 million or $2 million of that has already been allocated, and there's a current quarterly grant round that is ongoing that would absorb the remainder of that.
These last two items you talked about kind of indicates that there's a significant carry forward in the Rural Innovation Fund. Can you tell us a little bit about the volume of applications, approvals, and the intention behind that?
Absolutely. So the Rural Innovation Fund was conceptualized a couple of years ago as the governor realized that coming out of COVID that there was ample opportunity for us to invest in economic development in Georgia, and people as people look to embrace opportunity and ideas, to onshore or reshore production and the like. We continue to receive a fairly significant pipeline of applications, but that One Georgia Authority Board that you asked about a minute ago does take our role in stewarding public funds very seriously. I would suggest, and I don't have the numbers with me, but I think we have funded fewer than 20% of the projects that have been submitted. So, as this program, which is, now in its 18-month of existence, as it moves on, I anticipate that we will see better and better applications. But we have not said, oh, we started out the year with X amount of money, we've got to get rid of all that money. If a program, if an application comes in for, requesting $3.5 million and it doesn't have the legs to substantiate that, it's not been funded. And so that's where I think this is just kind of the early stages of a program that is still getting its sea legs. The other programs in One Georgia are all, I would consider, mature and are, fully subscribed in terms of funding.
Okay. All right. Anything else?
I don't think so. I think that's
Okay.
it, unless there are any other questions.
Okay, I'm going to open it up to questions. Any questions, Senator James or Senator Rahm? Senator Watson, you have any questions? Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess I'll work backwards. I think to where Chairman Beach was going. I mean, I think the $5 million, 86.2 is important. I think for the work that Georgia Tech's trying to do across state and the rural communities. I do want to go back to 83.2. I think there were questions from Chairman Beach and that impact Senator Watson's district. So I know that money does impact kind of a cluster of counties: Chatham, Bryan, Effingham, Bullock, Liberty, and Screven. I know West Georgia, we have interest in kind of seeing that project or that funding happen because from a logistics innovation perspective, we think it's critical as we look to the future in developing an innovation center. Similarly with University of West Georgia, and I think the structure that's been created, in Southeast Georgia, while it's unique because of the Ports Authority or whatever, as we look to move more freight west, and I think the impacts Interstate 20, 278, and Highway 27 in West Georgia, I think, it sets a really good best practice, I think, in terms of how do we innovate, how do we get more entrepreneurial dollars, investment dollars into a lot of these rural counties that maybe have a little bit of infrastructure, but are on the front edge, on the front lines of potentially exploding with growth, especially as we try to retain or steal business away from the state of Alabama and people west of us. So it's a really good project. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. I do have one final question. 82.1, go back to that 1.9 million for the historic sites preservation. Do you have sites in mind already to spend that money, or is it?
Again, this was a House ad. My understanding is that there are two specific projects that may support,
82.1.
but I don't have any real detail behind that. So I'll have to follow up with you with some detail as I get that.
Okay. I just want to kind of make sure, like when we gave money last year for the music that we didn't use.
That's right.
If you don't have historic sites, there must be something in there.
Exactly. Again, my understanding is that there are two projects in the south central coastal area, but I have no details on the projects. So, and those would be passed through funds.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate you,
Thank you.
Commissioner.
Appreciate you.
Thanks for all you do. All right, we got one final presenter, and that is the Public Service Commission. Commissioner Pridemore, come on up. What page?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Let's see what page.
Page 16 for NRS.
Page 16, guys. And 18, yeah, 16. Okay. All right, thank you. You got any questions you want to ask? Okay, the floor is yours, Ms. Pridemore.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's an honor to be with you today. I've brought along my colleague, Commissioner Johnson.
Well, thank you.
Thank
you all for what you do, by the way. We appreciate it.
Appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you. As we go through this budget season. So, everyone has been given a handout from the Commission. 2022 was one of the busiest years in the history of the Commission. We had a 14% increase in overall hearing days over 2021. Prior to that, I can tell you 2021 was the busiest day in the history of the Commission, busiest year in the history of the Commission. Over the past several years, we have benefited from this committee and the assistance that you've given us in staffing up. We are a small agency with a small budget, and so a little bit goes a long way for us. So I want to thank you all very much for the support that you gave us to bring us back to the full-time position level that we were previously at, which is 84. Last year, the General Assembly also approved $379,000 in our budget so that we could move to an electronic filing system. This is not to replace an existing electronic filing system, so to speak. We were doing it all manually. And so this is a big deal for us. And so it has definitely saved a lot of time and a lot of effort by the parties that come before us. The legislature also funded 2 additional call before you dig positions. This is important, not that the commission's out looking to bust people for not calling Georgia 811 or calling to have their tickets pulled before a project. This is definitely a safety item. And so very grateful to the legislature for being able to let us continue to grow this program, as we are primarily a pass-through for what happens on the federal side. And so this helps us attain higher numbers on our annual federal audit, which brings more money into the state. So it's a win-win. Since the FY21 budget, the commission has had the responsibility to secure the legal fees for external counsel used by the Attorney General's office in the Rose versus Raffensperger case. That is the lawsuit that involves the way that the PSC commissioners are elected. And so they are still using external counsel in addition to the state solicitor general. So we have been asked by the Attorney General's office to secure $203,000 to be able to pay those external legal bills this time. We are in need of some additional security. We've had several incidents over the last year of protests and people that have zip-tied themselves to our hearing room doors, and we've had quite a few events. So we've been getting support from the state troopers. We're very, very grateful for the Georgia State Patrol and the Post for coming out and supporting us on hearing days. We do meet 4 times a month, and that's aside from other hearings as well. And that is 12 months out of the year, so we're always in session. So we're asking for $47,840 to cover that cost of security. Last year, when the governor gave the state employees a $5,000 raise, a few PSC commissioners were incorrectly categorized. The House added $159,219 to the FY23 amended budget. So the total request that we have, which was all put in the House budget, is $207,059. And with that, Mr. Chairman, available for questions.
I just have one question. 273.2, I guess that's 49,990 for COLA. Is that COLA adjustments?
Yes, COLA adjustments.
What created the need for those adjustments?
So there was a difference in the timing. The report that was given, the number of positions that we had at the commission at the close of the year was 84. But when the raises were given, it was 76. Those raises were given 7/1 of 22. So we had a difference in the number of employees from that time.
Okay. Any other questions of the committee? Senator James, you have a question?
I'm trying to find out the question that someone asked me, but they
Well, why you find
something that would hurt if Texas comes in. You know what I'm talking about?
Texas would hurt if Texas comes in.
Yeah, and it's from your department.
I'm unaware,
Y'all have to-
but you're welcome. You can send it to me or call me with it direct.
Well, it's in my office across the street.
Yes, ma'am.
I just put notes on here, but not enough to remember.
No problem, Senator James. Just give me a call.
I will.
Happy to help.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
any questions, Senator? Okay. I just have one quick question that's not budget related.
Okay.
If it's okay, since we have 2 of our esteemed commissioners here. Tell me a little bit about working with the power company to make sure that our state substations and everything are secure, our electric grid and so on. I mean, I know what happened in, I think it was North Carolina. Somebody shot up one of the facilities. Are we taking steps to make sure that our power grids are safe and secure, and watching those facilities so we don't have a situation like that?
Mr. Chairman, that's an excellent question. We have over 3,000 substations in the state of Georgia, and they are overseen by not only their power generating source, Georgia Power, Oglethorpe Power, Georgia Transmission Company, and the MEAG partners, but there's also the consortium under NERC standards that they're viewed. I, as well as my colleagues, are very encouraged by House Bill 227, which increases the penalties on folks that do this type of activity. Right now in the state of Georgia, it's a misdemeanor. House Bill 227 will move that to a felony. What happened in Moore County, North Carolina, is horrible. It's devastating. It was devastating to the local economy for many days. As the people that regulate and approve the financing for these projects across our state, we want to see that they're secure as possible. There's no way to gold plate our state's transmission infrastructure, as other states have learned. But I can tell you that we do a lot of work on critical infrastructure analysis between staff and commissioners. We have good confidence in the way that the utilities are approaching this. And that is also seen nationally as well. The way that the Southern companies and the Oglethorpe Power companies, these 41 Georgia EMCs, view physical security is
Top
very much
priority.
envied across the country. Yes, sir.
Commissioner Johnson, you
I
have
was
any
going to say,
comments?
as are their cybersecurity. And when you mentioned that, what happened in North Carolina, it's not only devastating, it's scary.
Yeah.
Because the activities that can take place while the substation is down, as you know, can go off the rails. So it is so important for us, and I'm very confident in what our power companies are doing to protect our utilities.
Okay.
So I did have one question. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just piggyback off of Commissioner. So from a cybersecurity perspective, how frequently, or maybe not how frequently, but is it a regular course of business for the PSC to kind of have the cyber discussions with any of the other state agencies? Are y'all having regular conversations in terms of state infrastructure? Obviously, there's an impact with the
cybersecurity,
private sector, but
as you know, is at everyone's forefront of everyone's mind, and I have confidence that we're doing that. I attended a cybersecurity class earlier. It's been about a year ago, and we are working with other state agencies and our Georgia Power and our Oglethorpe Powers of the world to make sure that cybersecurity is top of mind.
Can you find out and bring back to us, like, specifically?
Sure.
What are you doing? Because I know you say
Yeah.
you think you are, but I would like to know that you are in fact.
Sure. Absolutely. Absolutely. And thank you.
Senator Fatarte, if I could follow on to Commissioner Johnson's answer.
Sure.
So in addition to the state stakeholders such as GEMA that we work with and we have relationships with on cyber and physical security matters, we also do a great deal with the federal government. As you can imagine, the FBI, the Department of Homeland Security, FERC, which is the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, they have our jobs at the federal level, and the Department of Energy regularly brief based upon activities, brief commissioners from across the country. There's a strong network of analysis and information on the federal level. Post breach, we see it at state levels, but not necessarily pre-breach. And a lot of that has to do with less you talk about something, the more that the more secure it can be. And so I think that on the federal side, the more that they can bring the states into the picture, because not only do we want to ensure utilities are protecting our Georgians, we also want to be able to determine what they should or shouldn't be able to allow to account for in rates. They can't come to us with a line item that's cybersecurity, that's a multi-million-dollar line item. We want to be able to know with good distinction what they're able to purchase with that, so that we know that we're getting the best possible deal for the consumer.
Yeah, so Commissioner, I agree with that. I just want to make sure that we're being proactive from a state perspective and doing that, because in my belief, I think there's inconsistencies across several agencies that whether we're doing that or not doing that. I think our federal partners I know our folks are doing the best job they can, but I think there's more we can do, staying in front of that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank y'all. Appreciate y'all coming today. Thank you for what you do. Keep the lights on.
All right.
Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
That's the goal every day, sir.
All
Thank
right.
you.
If there's no other questions, we don't have anything else. Do no other presenters? Okay. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much for coming.